Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the new Kershaw Launch 19. Man, there's a bunch of Launch series knives, and you know what? Most of them are really excellent. In fact, all of them are excellent in terms of overall quality. If you've never checked out the Kershaw Launch series, these are automatic knives that are made in the United States and are arguably the most competitively priced in their class. This is another great addition to the line. I will link the Launch series knives down below so you guys can check them out. And of course, the Launch 19. This should be available. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks to Kershaw for sending this in. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this knife, and then I'll give you guys my thoughts after carrying for a couple of days. Overall length is 7.5 inches. Blade length is 3 1/4. Cutting edge is about 2.75 thanks to an awesome forward choil. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. There's that radio voice and the upward and downward inflections. The knife is much closer to the size of the Demco 80-20.5, and I think obviously the personality or presence of the knife sometimes makes it feel bigger. This knife looks and feels a lot bigger than it actually is because of the presence, yes, the knife presence, but it's realistically close to the size of the 80-20.5. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? Once again, much closer to the size of the Para 3, and look how interesting. The ergonomic profile is very, very similar to the Spyderco Para 3. Now, this is when a lot of newer people like to scream copy because everybody loves drama. Listen, if you're new to knives, when certain lines in certain areas are similar, it's not a copy or a cause for a dumpster fire, right? That's not what people get lit up about. This is okay to do, and it's done a million times, right? If you didn't know, this is one of, I don't know, about 10,000 knives that exist out there with very similar ergonomic profiles. The only time people get bent out of shape is when a company creates an exact duplication of a knife and then sells it on AliExpress. That's when you can get all, spaghetti in your pants about it. But no, it's just this is a common ergonomic profile. It works, right? But there you go. This is just for your information. If you like the ergos of the Para 3, you will also like the ergos of this knife because it's very similar, right? Excuse me. Let's go ahead and put it up against, last but not least, the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. Once again, close to the size of the Deca. How's the action? That's definitely important. If you're familiar with the Kershaw Launch Series knives, then you'll know that they all have great firing action. This is not going to be quite as powerful as some of your, really high-end Microtech autos, but it is definitely more than acceptable, right? I mean, this is on par with a lot of Pro-Techs. The power is snappy, and here's what I always check. What's important is it has enough power to always get itself into the open position while the button is down. So even pulling this knife, this blade back just a little bit, it's always that spring in there is enough power to get it to open all the way up. That's all that's important, right? Very good, very snappy, no crunch, no awkwardness. It doesn't feel, like they were lazy in any area at all. It's the whole thing, the closing, the opening, everything is great. Obviously, with an automatic knife, the downside is you have to work against the tension of the coil spring to get it down into the closed position, but that's not really that big of a deal. Yes, you can absolutely do this with one hand. I don't recommend that. I recommend just using two hands, right? This is an automatic knife, meaning it is a switchblade. Whatever, if your definition of switchblade differs, I'm sorry, it's wrong. This is a switchblade. And I'm not saying that to be pompous. I'm saying that because in some areas you can get in trouble for this. Even if you think that it shouldn't be labeled that way, it's going to be factually. So be careful about where you live. look up the laws in your area and find out what can and cannot get you in trouble. If you live in an area like me, like Kansas, this is completely fine. You can carry this, you can own it, right? Some areas you can own these things but not carry them. So just a friendly message from me to you, look up the laws. But anyways, let's go ahead and do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's actually slightly thinner. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. See here, this guy really was a joy to carry. It's very similar in profile, in length to the Para 3. It's just not quite as tall, right? So most people are not going to have an issue with this. Let's go ahead and weigh it. What are we looking at for materials? So we have an aluminum frame. On this side, it's just a piece of aluminum. On this side, it's a piece of aluminum. It's got a little cutout here, right? And what's interesting is this piece of aluminum goes down to about halfway, and then this is all G10, and the G10 rests right on top of the standoff. Interesting. So we have brown G10, the aircraft aluminum frame, two pieces. One's just smaller. And then we have a two-tone 154, I'm sorry, not 154, it's CPM 154. I almost said 154 CM, which is the ingot version. This is the powder version of that steel, which is par for the course. This is what they like to use for this series and is perfectly acceptable. CPM 154 is one of my absolute favorite user steels of all time, and I find this to be perfectly acceptable. In fact, I'll buy knives in CPM 154 that are substantially more expensive. I love that steel. But anyways, those are your materials. Let's go ahead and weigh this knife. It's not going to be super heavy, though this is, admittedly. Did I lose the button? Oh no! Oh no! But look, this scale made it. It's been 6 years. Oh baby, no! I'm gonna have to glue that back on. Oh no! Channel history. Okay, let's change the units. Did I drop this? Jeez. Okay. 3.03 ounces, which is great considering that's, what the blade measurement was more than 3. So the ratios on this are very good. Balance, which we don't always do. It's right there where you're going to put your index finger. So like I said, this thing's not going to feel like a heavy knife, right? Unless you're, a hiker who's like min-maxing for like a slightly steep uphill, jaunt. I don't know why. I'm sorry. I'm not coming down on hikers. I'm just saying, like, a lot of them say that to me. They're like, every ounce matters. And I'm like, man, but are you really like cartoon mode with like a huge bag on you? You got pots and pans hanging off of you. And, the difference between a 1.8 ounce knife and a 2.8 ounce knife is like life or death. I don't believe you. I'm sorry. I don't believe you. I think that if you stray from your mini bug out to something that weighs 2.8 ounces, you won't die on that journey, right? I know what's going to happen in the comments, right? I'm just taking a couple jabs. Feel free to give them back to me. That's fine. Let's see here. We want to do blade stock thickness. Real quick. Yeah, there we okay. The battery's good. All of my tools are just failing right now. High quality Metal Complex YouTube channel. 120 thousandths is what we're looking at, which is again kind of par for the course here at the time. All right, meat and potatoes. The highlight of this knife is the ergonomic profile. Is it actually comfortable? Yes, it is. In both grips, because some people don't like this clip. That's fine. I love this clip. For a couple of reasons. Number one, it's ambi, which is very important. Number two, it comes down and it has a slight swoop, just a little one, not a grabby bill, right? That's great. Number three, to complement the fact that the bill is not pronounced, it is short, which is very important ergonomically. That clip is only slightly, you're only barely aware that clip is there, and that's because... It's a lot of rhyming. It's because the bill of the clip, any part of your, any amount that it is digging in back here, which for me is not nearly as much of a problem as when they have a much longer clip that digs into the middle of your hand. It's a VV. Sorry. Just got something stuck in my throat. Yeah, that's huge, right? So this is comfortable back here, and it's beautifully comfortable choked up. The jimping, which is very present, complements this index finger position perfectly. Now, how often are you really going to be holding your knife like this? I don't know. I don't do it a lot, but man, it feels good. right? If I break down cardboard and I really need to get into that thick stuff here, it doesn't have to be cardboard, whatever. Being able to choke up safely and put all the power into that initial cut, man, that really makes all the difference in the world, right? You gotta let the tool do the work for you, you know, all that. It's fine. Now, ergonomics aside, I gotta admit, I am not a huge fan of the color combination here, but that's very subjective, right? You can't say that the knife is bad because it's brown and black. I don't like brown and black. I don't like brown G10. This is the only configuration this knife comes in currently. And, you know, we could say, oh, well, you know, secondary scale makers could like make different colors. Sure. I would like this knife to have released or eventually release with different scale options. I also don't love that it's a two-tone blade. I personally like it when it's just all one color, but again, that's just me, right? Now, if you were like, hey, I love brown and I love black, so the combination of those two things, chef's kiss, right? Then you'll like this. You'll like this. So that's my opinion on the color. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I wish we had more options, right? Would be cool. And, you know, if this ends up being a super popular model, then of course, I'm sure that Kershaw will do other colors. But as of right now, this is your only option. Kershaw does a magnificent belt satin finish or machine satin finish. It's magnificent. I personally am kind of bored of but man, like Kershaw, if you're going to give an example of like the best possible satin finish out there, man, that is gorgeous, right? God, it just makes me think back to the old ZT days. They've been doing this for a long time. It looks really good for a satin finish. I would still prefer a different one, but hey, credit where it's due. Elongated, we'll call this, what should we call this, a modified clip point? Will that satisfy the blade shape police? Probably not. I get arrested every single time I do a knife review. Cutting geometry, very good, nice and thin. It's just a straightforward utilitarian blade shape. It's gonna do what you want it to do. Minimal billboarding. I don't like all the codes all over it, but okay. I think this is a better in-house design. It's got a little more personality than some of their other in-house designs. I don't know if it's just one guy or multiple guys. I'm sure it's multiple people that are designing these things. I think this knife has a bit more personality. It really is kind of like an auto Para 3, right? Not completely, but yeah, it's in that ballpark, right? And I think that's okay. I think that's cool that they did it. Everything, fit and finish all the way around, really great. And again, these are made in the USA. Not all Kershaws are made in the USA, right? So if you went to Walmart and you paid $38 for your Kershaw, that's made in China. Almost certainly, unless you bought it like 2 decades ago. But these are made in the USA, the automatic knives, and the quality shows. Kershaw does a great USA-made knife. I don't know which part. I mean, it's as the case with many companies. Certain parts are probably outsourced, but the majority of the knife is made in the United States, right? So I don't know what percentages, but that's probably the case. We have a little bit of bronzing going on the standoff back here, which is kind of cool. We have a big old, you know, we didn't do the hardware check at all. We got to do that. We got a big old screw holding in the scale to the frame and standoff there. So let's go ahead and get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use in this channel. That pivot is almost certainly a T8. And let's just check that real quick. Great. And look at this captive pivot. Look, this is such a simple way to do this. Other companies, Kershaw's been doing this for a long time. Just do it like this. It's so easy. Or something. It doesn't even have to. You can pick your own shape. You could pick a triangle. You could even pick a trapezoid. I don't think people care. Just make them captive because nobody likes to do this with 2 drivers. Thank you, Kershaw. Sorry. The body screw. Yeah, T8. That's great. That rhymes. T6, 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 T6. Well, T6, T6. Okay, there's a bunch of them. A lot of T6. Not the biggest fan of that, but it's also not a deal breaker. This will be easy to take apart. Putting it back together will be a little tricky because you're dealing with a coil spring. Anybody who's dealt with that before, right? We can say that it's not that hard, but for the first time, it was. The first time you did it, it was a little frustrating. So let's be fair to new people. It will be a little bit frustrating. I would recommend using compressed air as much as possible if you're worried about debris getting in there, right? If you just absolutely have to take everything you buy apart, well, good luck. Anyways, pocket clip, position, carry depth is great. In and out of the pocket, very easy, smooth surfaces. Wish they would recess those screws, but that's not really that big of a deal. That's pretty much it. We have the American flag over here on the other side. There's not really a whole lot more to say. Lockout is completely and totally solid. Very nice. No stick. No pivot lash. I mean, it's smooth. Tension obviously going towards my index finger. Snap into the closed position. Solid. Well, I mean, all autos you can push down just a bit. They need a little bit of room there. But that's fine, right? It's not going to rattle is my point. Centering. Dead on. Dead on. I got like basically no complaints about this, except for the fact that the only aesthetic configuration that's available is brown and black with a two-tone blade. It would be cool to just have the same, if we're not going to change the blade, that stutter, then give us different colored scales, right? Blue, green, red, like give us all that. That'd be cool. Price is all right. I mean, it's still very competitive. It's $169, giggity. I feel like these knives, like the Launch Series knives, I always thought like 150 to 160 is kind of like where I like to see them. This one's a little more expensive. I don't know why. I mean, you know, we could be lazy and say inflation, but I don't know. It's all right. It's very competitive. It's still really hard. Like, I mean, ProTech makes a few things that are competitive with this, but they make a lot of stuff that's $100 more, right? As it sits, it's cool. Beautifully ergonomics. One of my favorite in the series for ergonomics. It's one of my least favorite aesthetically. But all that aside, I think this is objectively a good knife. And I think the value is pretty good. So, all that being said, this is a recommendable knife. If you can carry automatics, right? Or at least own them. This is absolutely a recommendable knife. Kershaw is doing so well, man. I just love seeing them thrive. It's pretty. I mean, you're always going to have small groups of people who disagree for what, but it's nice to see. I genuinely feel that, but it's also nice to see that the vast majority of the people who watch my channel, at least, agree with that. At least people who are interested in Kershaw. So I think it's pretty obvious they're doing well, and they're also, I think, doing a decent job of listening to the community. So, nice to see. Good stuff from Kershaw. I'm always excited to see what they come out with next, which wasn't the case a couple of years ago. There was a long period of time where I was like, I don't really care what Kershaw's doing because nothing has been interesting for so long, you know? But man, doing great. It's awesome to see. So, very cool. This will be linked down below along with, like I said, the rest of the Launch Series knives. So check that stuff out. If you're looking for your first USA automatic knife, I'm telling you, look through the Launch Series knives. They're so good. There's 19 of them. Just pick the one you like. They're all great. All right. And I've reviewed, I think, almost all of them. Like, if you want my reviews, you can type in Metal Complex Kershaw Launch, and you'll get most of my launch videos there. Anyways, please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.